Hello, everyone, and welcome to my Saturday afternoon, I guess. My name's Reject, and with me today is Don. How's it going, Don?
Not too bad.
Good.
Nice, easy Saturday afternoon.
Yeah, I'll be honest with you. I literally just woke up at 12:30. I work overnight, and I try to take my Friday because that's my first day off of the weekend. And I try to take that day to try to flip my schedule just for Saturday morning because I usually get up and go play D&D, and I could not get to sleep last night for the life of me. So I had to cancel going to play D&D just to get some sleep because I was like, I got to be awake for the afternoon, and I don't get my afternoon nap. So here I am, as wide awake as I can be. All right. So I've been watching the news. I mean, I'm sure everybody has. I don't watch mainstream news. Can't stand those idiots. But I've been watching the other stuff, and there's a new channel called Eyes On that streams the protests / riots that are going on pretty much every day. Multiple different streams each day and everything. And the more I watch it, the more I personally think of, okay, so can police reform actually happen? Like, I can see reforming the justice system. Personally, I think there's some stuff there that definitely needs to be changed. But some of the stuff that they're demanding be changed as far as the police goes, I don't see it being able to be a reality myself. And I wanted to have a discussion about that.
So, well, you can definitely have it as a reality. I mean, you can abolish police in the next 5 minutes. I don't know that I'd call that a particularly good reform, but you certainly could do it. Right. And a lot of the problem is that for a lot of us, we look at this and go, well, what you're talking about is unrealistic. There's no possible way to get this done in which you will have a positive outcome and in which cops will still be able to do cop things. And for so many of us, the problem really is that it doesn't make sense given the stated objective. And the reason it doesn't make sense given the stated objective is because the stated objective is a lie.
Right. Well, okay. Well, let's take their utopia of Chaz as an example.
Sure.
What happened within the first, I wouldn't even say first 24 hours, but I'll give them that. What happened within the first 24 hours? They created a security system that was basically their own version of police that, set the standard of how people were going to be dealt with if they broke their rules.
Yes.
And so what is that at that point? Because they're going to call it neighborhood policing or whatever, but it's like, okay, but that's still just policing. Police as a system became a thing because people, as we started to group together in bigger and bigger clusters, was like, hey, we need some people that are going to make sure that if somebody does something wrong, they don't just fall completely into mob justice.
Well, so again, you're dealing with the stated goal here, right? So Understand that for a lot of these people, they look at the police a lot more like enforcing ideology onto the populace than they do as somebody enforcing a group of ideas that we have agreed are a problem, right? So no rape, no murder, no theft, any of those things.
Right.
According to a lot of the left, this is enforcing the idea of capitalism. And I mean, to some degree, they're kind of right. And according to them, capitalism is wrong and everything capitalism ever did is terrible. And so what you're dealing with is not so much that they want to abolish the police. They want a use of force mechanism, which is what the police are, and they want that use of force mechanism to be able to enforce their ideas as opposed to yours. It's why they show up and go, we don't want police, but what we do want is people who will permit you to lie, cheat, steal, break things, etc., because property doesn't matter.
See, I can't disagree with you there. I'll be honest. Like I listened to them talk about how they want to have psychiatrists. If somebody's having a mental breakdown, they want to have psychiatrists go in and talk with them. and it's like, or if somebody's having a bad trip, they want to have drug counselors go talk with them. And it's like, I'm sorry, but most of the time when somebody's having a mental break or a bad trip, they're around the people that already know them the best. So therefore, if they can't talk them down, what is a counselor of any sort going to be able to do to stop that if that person has already gone beyond being able to listen in any type of reasonable fashion to the people who love and care about them, potentially? Not saying everybody around you at that moment is going to love you and care for you, but those counselors are going to get hurt. And then how many of them get hurt before they just say, screw it, we're just sending in the police every time again?
So again, you're looking at stated objectives and saying this is irrational. This doesn't make any sense. Which look, I understand the problem entirely, right? You go to a discussion, you want to have an honest discussion with somebody, and the very first thing they do is show you dishonesty, and you go, "What the hell?" Right? Because it doesn't make any sense. It doesn't. And so either the stated the person you're dealing with is either outright crazy and simply cannot think in any rational way, or they are thinking in a rational way, they're just lying to you. And at some point, after you point out hundreds and hundreds of times, look, this can't work for these reasons. You can see in this place, it doesn't work for these reasons. The only available answer becomes they're lying to you. And it can't be anything else, because they know clearly all of the reasons why it doesn't work. They know that when they implement these policies, that their suggested outcome doesn't happen. So either these are the dumbest people on earth, of which many of them are some of the most shrewd people you'll ever meet and you'll even listen to in your life. I mean, they clearly are not complete morons. And so the only thing left is dishonesty, right? Yeah. It's just, there's not another option. I would love to say that there is, but, well, this person is a Mensa member except in this one aspect. I don't think I believe that. That doesn't make any sense, right? So either this is, the stated goal is a lie, or they're the smartest, dumbest people on earth. And so, the contradiction is in the sentence. It basically has to be a lie. And so what do you end up with if you actually go talk to, people who have dealt with any of this nonsense? You end up with, well, we sent in the psychologist, the therapist to go talk to these people that needed some sort of help, and it turned into a violent de-evolution in about 4 seconds. And to the question of, well, what happened, when do they just send in the cops? They don't, right? Because if the objective is to cause mayhem, this makes sense. If the objective is to actually have safe communities, none of this makes sense.
Right. So I think there are some things that can potentially be done. I think they can work on, better screening of trying, and they've gotten way better at it than they used to be, but trying to weed out the people that are looking for a powerful position to make them feel powerful, and so that then they can enforce that power on other people. They've gotten better at getting, not letting those people become police officers, but they still get through.
Well, what's the objective there, right? Because just spurging screening doesn't mean anything, right? If it's about people who are on a power trip, right, what you're talking about is some sort of psychological screening, and then what you're talking about is the ability to sort of laser focus whether or not you have bullies, right?
Right.
And so if that's the objective, then there is a reality that you're not going to catch even a majority of those people, right?
Right.
Well, not even a majority. And so the outcome you're looking for is on the far side of them becoming cops. You can't pre-crime this out of existence, right?
Right.
If you get a cop who shows up to police school and seems like an otherwise good guy, seems like he's doing all the right things, he's, acing the tests, he's, saying all the things that he's supposed to be saying, how do you get rid of that person? And by the way, in the world of psychological testing, the outcomes are horrendously bad. And furthermore, I would note that any time that we say what we're going to do is screen the police in advance, what you find in 5 minutes is the left promoting their agenda in that screening circumstance, right? And you already see that with, well, certain numbers of them need to be ethnic minority X, Y, and Z.
Right, which that actually forces the other side of that to actually be what ends up happening, because if all you're looking at is do they meet this criteria, you're not bothering to see do they check themselves out by this criteria.
Well,
and
therein is the problem. You simply cannot know. Like,
right.
It is a physical impossibility. Reality gets in the way by far too much if you want to know everything about a person. And going down the we need better screening road is going towards the objective. We need to know everything about a person, right?
Well,
it's just not possible.
Right, and I agree. I'm just saying, that is one one area where we could possibly get better, but that's starting with the treating them as individual people and not just as a collective that's out to screw everybody over. Which I'll be honest with you, I'm a proponent of, if you get arrested, if you get if you're in that actual situation where it's looking like you're probably going to get arrested, just let them arrest you. Don't talk to them. Wait till you have a lawyer. Don't even if don't give them any information, then you absolutely have to give them from that moment on.
Who's that guy, that lawyer? He put out a video like 10 years ago, or somebody put out one of his talks on YouTube like 10 years ago. And I steal a line from it regularly because it's so applicable to everything, which is to say, somewhere in there, he has a cop come down and he's talking about interrogations. And he says, look, you think you're super smart. I've been interrogating people for 25 years. Even if you're smart, even if you're better in general at this than me, do you want to get in a ring with Mike Tyson in his prime and box with him? Because that's what you're doing when you come to interrogations with me.
Right. But yet at the same time, because of my job and everything, I interact with police officers every day, and I have, nice conversations with them and everything. At the same time, am I stupid enough to go, hey, I see this particular officer every day, so if they're going to come and arrest me, then, they're automatically going to be like super friendly with me? No. I
know you, so we're drinking buddies, so you won't arrest me. Yeah, that'd be a big mistake.
There was that video of that nurse that wouldn't take the blood draw and run the test specifically at that moment for that sheriff, and he ended up arresting her. And I was with her overall, still mostly with her, but when she started fighting back, I was like, just let them arrest you. You made that into a bigger problem for yourself than it needed to be, because if you would have just let them arrest you and everything, it all would have worked out. But she fought back, and so then it becomes, she potentially got hurt or whatever. And it's just like, I don't want nobody getting hurt. If you just let them arrest you, and then, hey, if it ends up being a wrongful arrest, because it probably could be if it's that case, then you can turn around and sue them for wrongful arrest or whatever, if that's what you want to do. But fighting with them doesn't, it gets you hurt faster in the short run and doesn't help you much in the long run.
Well, be that as it may, so what's the point of reform here? Like, what is the reform that makes this matter? What are we? Well, I mean,
okay,
where are we at?
Personally, I wanted to have a discussion, but like, I personally see trying to reform, doing better at reforming the actual justice system. After you've been arrested, after you've been convicted, depending on the crime, start, and yes, this would require more funding overall, but start trying to actually put centers so that if it's a nonviolent first-time offender, instead of putting them straight into jail because they have to do time for a couple years, have programs set up so that they can potentially serve their time, but at the same time get some learning or something. And if they can complete said training or whatever, potentially look at if it's help people, instead of keeping going down the path of being a criminal, start trying to help them see that there's a different path to take and try to help them not be a criminal for the rest of their life.
So what you said there just doesn't mean anything to me, right? Because what you're talking about is minimum security prisons, the mandate by the Supreme Court that prisoners have access to, and in some cases, mandatory time to do things like get degrees. They have various exercises. I mean, the things that you're talking about here either already exist or are incapable of being created.
So if they do get their degree and everything, it's not possible to help them maybe not have to have a criminal record.
So that is a thing that is available to you, right? So whether or not they know about it, you can get out and you can apply to have your conviction lowered to a misdemeanor. Usually it takes a couple of years, that sort of thing. And there's a purpose for that, right? If we take these people and the day they get out of prison, we say, okay, you no longer have a felony record, right?
Right.
And we expunge their record immediately. And the next day they go out and
commit a crime.
Apparently destroy your entire house in the background of the stream. Right?
Sorry.
So the thing that record is there for is to inform the next judge, hey, this person, this is a pattern of behavior. This is not a thing they did just once, right? Because every criminal, career or otherwise, starts with a first crime. And so if the idea is we're going to expunge their record immediately, then every offender is a first-time offender. And what you're going to end up with is murderers in minimum security prison because, well, it was just a first-time offense anyway. And that ignores things like what is going on in Chicago, where quite literally they say, well, if you're a first-time offender, basically no matter what you did, your first felony is free. We're not going to charge you because we decided that you're probably not a bad person. You just made a mistake. And so if you were to nationally say something like, well, as soon as you served your time, you don't have a felony record, then you're going to end up with no felons of any variety in places like Chicago. That is, and don't get me wrong, not all national policy should be based on Chicago, but they're also not alone here. A lot of major cities are doing very similar things.
Okay. See, I'll be honest with you. This is not stuff that I don't necessarily worry about most of this stuff too much because I prefer to keep my head down and just mind my own damn business and everything. I did not know that for the most part you can, try to get your record expunged if that's what you wanted. Not expunged, but get your stuff brought down and everything. So cool. But,
So this is sort of my problem with almost all of this police reform discussion, right?
Okay.
Is that everybody is out there screaming at the top of their lungs, we need to fix this thing. And what I end up finding almost every time is either, and I don't mean this as a pejorative, just as a factual statement, ignorance of the situation as it exists, or something so unrealistic that what you end up with is abolish the police. Right. I mean, those are the two options on the table. And boy, do I understand more than most. I just want to be left alone. Just let me go live my life. Stop the madness. Right. Because let's face it, that is the majority of us in all of these discussions. I wouldn't even care about this reform the police talk if they weren't talking about abolishing the police. Right. But there is a absolute reality that what we have done in this country is police reform for, at this point, at least 35 years, right? We have done most of the things that people are talking about that seem rational, that seem reasonable. Look, I am not all that big of a fan of the felony record thing. I know why it exists, and I don't want to abolish it for that exact reason. However, the reality is if you, you commit felony theft and then you go get a job, you serve your time, get a degree in something that doesn't require you to have trust, right? Because if you steal something, a crime of moral turpitude, which is what theft is, says that you can't be an accountant anymore. So probably don't get an accounting degree,
Well, it should also say that, why would you necessarily trust that person as even a cashier at a crappy a corner convenience store.
Right.
I mean, if they're going to steal, then they're going to steal from anybody. That I remember when I first started working at the convenience company that I worked for, they said 99% of the people that come in aren't going to steal from you. Or no, they were. It was something like that. But they said the people that are going to steal just because are going to steal no matter what. There's nothing you can do to stop it. And then I think they went with 89%. There's going to be them people that are going to steal, and then there's going to be them people though that they'll steal because they can, because they had that opportunity. But if you don't give them that opportunity, they won't steal. And it's like, so that's how come, it's always keep your head on a swivel and make sure you know where your customers are. You don't give them the opportunity to steal, they won't steal. But it's like, if you already know the person's going to steal, why would you even want to hire that person?
Well, so what you're talking about in the first instance is barrier to entry for theft, right? Like there's a reason you don't see diamond rings sitting in open air in the middle of major cities, because people would steal them. And by the way, for the street vendors that are in New York, they have constant theft problems for this exact reason. It doesn't even matter what they're selling. They have constant theft problems because of that.
Right.
Based on their business model, there's not much they can do, and they do as much as they can. That said, I can't imagine how many business owners I've known that said, look, most of the theft that I really care about is employees, because look, you get the wrong employee, they'll rob you blind. And on top of that, the reality is they're the ones that have access to cash. The availability for them to steal from you is much higher than the average customer. Yeah, it sucks if I lose, whatever item off the shelf, but the reality of theft comes from employees. And so that's why you see cameras pointed at employees, cameras pointed at the back of registers and that sort of thing, so that employers can catch people who are actually stealing from them. But again, we're pretty far off the realm of police reform here, because the reality of the outcome here is one of the other functions of criminal records, based on the way that the system works as it is right now, is that if you're a thief, I probably don't want to hire you in a place where you can steal from me. Right now, if I'm hiring you to dig ditches, probably not that big of a deal to me. What are you going to do? Steal a shovel? I'll probably know if you do. Those kinds of things. And so much of what's going on here is, well, why should they have to dig ditches? Well, because they stole something. And I know nobody wants to hear that. Oh, we should have all of this sympathy and empathy for the thieves and murderers of the world. Sorry, I don't. Don't steal things. Don't kill people. Don't rape. It's pretty simple rules to get along, right?
Yes.
And I also understand that we have this ridiculously overbearing legal code where all kinds of things that nobody knows is a crime, right? So if you transport your iguana from, I don't know, Wyoming to New York, you've committed like 6 felonies. Now, that right there is not a discussion of police reform. That's a discussion of getting rid of the Lacey Act, right? Because that is the thing that makes that a crime. And so if we want to go after the giant legal code, I'm totally sold, but that's not police reform either.
I guess I'd call that at that point at least thought of police reform, but obviously you're not, because you're not doing anything directly to the police. They're just enforcing the codes and laws that, as a majority of people have agreed, these are the things that we need to worry about. I guess at that point, I like, as far as directly to the police, I agree with you. It's one of those things where it's like, I don't necessarily see it being something that legitimately can be done, or at this point even, should be done. Should police be held accountable for what they do wrong? Yes, but they are already doing that. So what,
Well, the question then becomes, right, how is it that police are held accountable? And that is a much trickier question than anybody wants to admit, right? Because if you go and you look up, I believe it's San Diego's excessive force complaints, you find millions per year.
Right.
It is just an unrealistic number. It's like 25% of interactions are an excessive force complaint in San Diego. Now, either San Diego PD is beating the hell out of everyone they encounter, in which case, I don't know how they have time, right? I mean, beating the hell out of people takes time, and it's just physically impossible for them to actually be beating the hell out of this many people, or these people are lying, right? And there's not a lot of middle ground here. Okay, some of them are telling the truth. That's obvious. On the other hand, that requires investigation, that requires all kinds of things. And then you get into the grounds of, well, I don't want the cops investigating themselves. So what we need to do is create some other organization that are effectively going to be the cops for the cops. And then as soon as those don't go the way people want, you're going to need the cops for the cops for the cops. And then as soon as those don't go the way people want, you're going to need the cops for the cops for the cops for the cops. And so either we need to most likely create some transparency in those investigations, though I understand you can't make dishonest people honest with facts. You simply can't do it. Or we need to acknowledge that there are a lot of dishonest people in this world, and they will just overtly lie. And the best example of that I know is Michael Brown. Michael Brown jumped into, I always forget the cop's name, but he jumped into the cop's car, and he started beating the hell out of him. And that cop then pulled out his gun and shot him. Well, if somebody climbs into my car and starts beating the hell out of me, I'm going to pull out my gun and shoot them. Well, right. I would, if not for a series of tragic boating accidents. Instead, I don't have any guns anymore.
Oh, I will be getting my first gun hopefully here in the next couple weeks. Got to wait for the background check and everything to finish going through.
That sounds like blue state pain.
It's really actually not. Currently, we are a Republican state. It's Iowa. It's just they're a shall issue state, but you still have to do the background check. So
background checks are done by NICS, which is the National Instant Check System. They run a background check in anywhere between 30 seconds and 3 minutes. I mean, if you're waiting on a background check, it's a state mandate.
Yeah, it's one of those things where I'm just like, whatever. It's, it is what it is. I basically have the gun paid for. It's currently on layaway. I just have to wait. So, okay, fine.
This is, so I don't mention that, I occasionally get the, Don, would you stop poning people when you say stuff like that? And that's not the point, right? So understanding your legal system and the world around you will explain so many of the problems that we see, right?
Right.
And that right there it's a massive barrier to entry because let's be honest, nobody cares about this. Nobody, just me, nobody else, right? And that's not precisely true. They're, the one crime a day guy or, felony a day or whatever it is that is on Twitter. He's out there exposing this sort of thing. It's amusing. But the reality of these situations is we encounter a lot of stuff in life that is the government doing what was reform yesterday. And we act like it's always been that way, and it hasn't. Or we act like it's that way everywhere, and it isn't, right? And so if it is a problem for you, and reasonably it probably is, that, you have whatever your own reasons are for buying a gun, and you went down and you did your background check and you paid for your gun, and then your state said, that's nice, leave it at the gun store for a week, right? Yeah. And I mean, whatever the time frame is, that's what happened.
Okay. The part that I'm waiting on currently is my permit to carry. If I had bought like a rifle of some sort, strictly for home defense type of thought process, I would have been able to buy it and walk out of there with it that day. But I'm getting a handgun, so it's got to run through the sheriff, and that also works as my permit to purchase as far as handguns go. It's the handguns that you got to worry about, apparently, not the rifles.
Well, I mean, if you're going to write policy based on crime statistics, it's definitively handguns you have to worry about.
Exactly. And but the gun issue talk is, again, a different talk. I guess I'll be honest with you, Don. It sounds like most of the stuff we basically agree on, that like they're just being disingenuous jackasses to say that police reform will solve all problems, because it won't. And the stuff that they're wanting isn't isn't realistic. It's not whether or not it's possible. It's just not realistic.
Well, so again, we come back to the objective here, right? Because and every now and again, you will see these people show you what they actually want, right? And most of the time, it's when they think they're trying to logic you into a thing. Because a lot of what is driving police reform right now, regardless of what anybody thinks about the situation, is George Floyd. Not because right, wrong, or otherwise, not because there's some definitive evidence one way or another about whatever, not because of any of the stated reasons, but because it got enough traction in the media. And so what you're actually seeing is stop police from using force. And this is the problem with the situation, is no one is saying that out loud. No one is saying, that's it, we can have cops, but they can't use force, right? Because if you said that out loud, the entirety of the country would go, that's stupid, no, right?
Well, you know, and that part right there is most evidenced by the fact that the Rashard Brooks situation.
Exactly. Right. So the man pulls out a taser, beats the hell out of a couple of cops, steals a taser, tases one, and you still shouldn't shoot him. Well, okay, when the hell do you shoot these people then?
Right. And on top of that, it's not like they had just pulled him over for some random reason, just because he was driving down the street and they thought that he looked funny or whatever. No, he was passed out, intoxicated in a fucking drive-through.
Yeah.
So at what point does it, go, look, we have all the tape? Or there was one that just happened, as far as I can tell, like it just happened yesterday or sometime this week in Detroit, Michigan. And they were actually, the person they were going to arrest was going peacefully and everything, but somebody they were with acted like they were going to be all calm, and then turns around, pulls a gun out of their pocket, and gets off 4 shots. And the police end up shooting him. At this point, I don't know if the guy lived or died from it, but then they started rioting in Detroit because of that. And it's like, well, protesting in Detroit because of that. But it's like,
right.
They issued the tape just yesterday. They held a conference and everything about it. And they were showing all the tape and everything. And it's like, when you watch that tape, that's a completely justified shooting. There is no, well, maybe they could have done something different. No,
after somebody starts dropping rounds in your direction, it's time to shoot them. And that seems like an obvious line that everyone would get on board with if we were having an honest discussion, right? And that's the problem. This is not an honest discussion. This is not somebody that you rationally disagree with, and they just have a marginally different point of view. And if we just got rid of chokeholds, then everything would be fine. Because, by the way, as far as I can tell, that effectively already happened, right? And yet, even in that, if you go compare it to what happened to, I just said the guy's name. George Floyd. What you find out is that wasn't a chokehold, right? It was a blood choke. And I understand that most of the populace doesn't understand the difference. But if what you want to do is say we need to get rid of chokeholds, well, basically all police departments got rid of chokeholds sometime in the 80s and 90s. And they did it on their own, right? So that's not the problem. Now, if what you want to say is you can't use blood chokes, and then you're going to say you can't use tasers, and then you're going to say you can't use guns, and then you're going to say you can't use nightsticks, what am I left to think except that cops are not allowed to use force? Because any force that they're using, these people are upset about.
There were some that had the pepper ball guns.
That was too much too, right?
Well, apparently one broke some little girl, 14-year-old girl's ribs, and then they threw her down on the ground and gave her a concussion and everything. And it's like, hold on. It's a pepper ball gun. Basically, it's a paintball gun. So we better go take all them fucking paintball guns away from all them 14-year-old kids that are out there doing paintball all the damn time.
Well, you think that sounds ridiculous and makes the point, but understand that that's coming, right?
Right.
I mean, go look at them on the gun control front,
Oh,
and
they're fucking idiots.
if it's a weapon of any variety, it's bad. And if you don't believe that, go look at England, who is banning knives, right? And by the way, I was at least tangentially attached to these debates in the 90s, where I heard everybody in Europe who wanted to criticize American gun laws go, we would never ban knives. That's stupid. And here I am in the early 2000s watching them ban knives.
Right.
So,
well, and it's, you know, it definitely becomes one of those things where it's like they keep moving the goalpost. The other day I'd gotten into a disagreement with somebody on Twitter because they were mad about the fact that international college students are going to be being sent back home if they can't attend at least one in-person class. And it's like, okay, but is their goal to get an education, or is their goal to become immigrants to America? Because if it's to get an education, then this shouldn't be an issue. If it's to get immigration status, then yeah, I can see where this would be an issue. But you can't argue that this should be the facts if they're just coming for an education and we advance the technology to a point where they can do it at home. Then maybe they should try to argue that their laws at home should be changed so they can do it from home where it'd actually be cheaper for them.
See, again, you're running into the I want to have an honest conversation with a dishonest person problem, right? Because, well, what you're saying doesn't make any sense. But you said it's about them coming to college here. And so if they're not going to college, then why would they be here? Obviously, the objective is not whatever is stated, right? Because if you honestly, rationally took what they said the objective was and went, well, then we should be doing this. And you're totally right. There's no argument to be had. If you want to come here and be a student, then clearly you'd be being a student, right? And that is, I mean, it's almost a tautology. There's no way around it. It's very much, it is what it is. And so, yes, obviously, we should have students that are students. Again, regardless of whether or not you like foreign students, it doesn't really matter. If that's the objective, then all of this makes sense. And therefore, the only answer is, well, then you're being dishonest, right? That's not the objective you have. You want a way for people to get here so they can make some stated claim and then immigrate to the U.S., right? Because that is the objective that they're actually pushing for. Right. That is the thing that they, all of their tactics actually have as an end result. And so one of those things that I find myself saying a lot is that to the right, as defined by the left, not by the right, and by the way, that's everybody to the right of Mao. To the right, according to, by left's definition, this is a discussion. Everybody to the right of Mao is out there going, oh, well, yeah, let's have a rational conversation about this. Let's, you have these objectives. You honestly came to me with a problem. Let's go fix them. And every single time, and I mean every single time, without fail, you will find yourself defending the method to get to their stated objective and have them yelling at you for that being wrong.
I can't overall disagree with you. Like I said, when I was having the thought of having this discussion, I wasn't necessarily like, I want to talk to a person that has this point of view or that point of view. Oh boy. Sorry. Hold on.
Apparently, while we're muted, I'll sit here and talk to chat. So, how you doing, chat? I don't know if we're even going to run out the delay. Apparently not. Never mind. Go away, chat.
Sorry. Doggy got an upset stomach, and I was hoping that he was done. I apologize.
Don't want to broadcast that live? I don't think I blame you.
Well, poor little guy. He's not really little, but he's not super huge. I find him to be the perfect size. He's about knee level, and he's big enough that nobody'd want to mess with him, but small enough that I can control him. So
it's your dog.
Exactly. All right. So, when I was, like I said, when I was thinking about having this conversation and everything, I wasn't sure if I was going to get somebody that was more on the same thinking path that I am, or if they were going to be arguing for it, or, what. And I didn't necessarily care, because I just want, I just want to have an honest discussion. But I don't see how their point of view is something that leads to anything that isn't already in place. And if they, other than abolishing the police, which is just not an option because you're going to have to put something there anyways.
Well, you need to understand that for these people, it is an option, right? And not only is it an option, it's the objective. And there's a lot of reasons for that, of which I have many, many hours of content that I put out this week alone on, for which I'm sure I will be called a conspiracy theorist. And yet, the reality is, look at what they're doing, right? If any of this was wrong, I'm happy to hear why. But right. All of that wrapped up basically comes to, they are very interested in destroying anything that vaguely looks like society. And their reasoning for that very clearly to me looks like install whatever the progressive utopia is. And I make no bones about this, in the sense that the progressives are the people who are advancing international communism, and they have been for the last century. And if you are having trouble understanding anything they're doing, take one look at it through that idea, one look at it through that lens, and all of this makes sense. And this is the problem I have with this, because if you say those things out loud, people go, "Oh my God, oh, Red's under the bed, Red scare. Oh my God, we're back to the Cold War now, Don," and all that sort of thing. And yet, I have no problem understanding what the left is doing, and everyone else does.
My thing is that I've always been a bit of a conspiracy theorist, mostly because my mom. Like my mom started showing me and my sister things that pointed out stuff about the government a long time ago. Sure. And so if I put all of that stuff out there, I learned as a child that if I put all that stuff out there, everybody was like, "Oh my God, you're just crazy. You're just crazy." And so I learned mostly to keep it to myself. And then in regards to a lot of that stuff, I watch for it. I see it happening, but I don't necessarily worry about putting it out there, because of the fact that I've come to the point where I ask myself, okay, what can I do about this? Can I change this? No. Okay. Well, then again, I just kind of do my best to keep my head down, help the people that I can help directly around me or something. And then, let those people do what they're going to do. And no offense to anybody that thinks I'm being a coward, but hopefully just they'll ignore me and those that I care about, because that's all I can really do in that situation. If they come to my house, then we got to go.
Well, look, by the time they come for you, right? First they came for, right?
Right.
And by the time they come for you, there will be no one left to help, right? Exactly. And everyone who is there to help, who even is there and could help, will be hiding behind the same mentality. And boy, do I understand not wanting to put yourself out there, out in front of the giant rage train that is almost all of society at this point. And let's be honest, that's what they are, right? They will come to destroy you. The moment they notice you seems to really be the answer, right? And so it's not so much about whether or not I have any expectation of people look, I realize half the internet is running around talking about anonymity and how they need to be able to say the things they need to say. And, this is my face. I don't, this is me, right? If you wanted to find me, you could do it in probably 5 minutes. Most of the internet could probably find me in 5 minutes. And I understand that not everyone else is in that position. And I wouldn't ask anyone to put themselves in that position, because it's a lot of fire that I'm asking for. And I realize that not everyone can take that. However, can you do things to change this? Yes. And the small amount that it takes to do things to change these problems is the kind of thing we need to get people doing, right? There is a reality here that if the right was doing even well, again, the right is defined by the left, right? Anyone to the right of Mao was doing the kinds of things that the left is doing, which is not to say burning down cities, because I have no intention of telling people to do that. But if they were anywhere near as active as these crazy leftists, then this sort of thing would stop. And it's basically that simple, right? If your House representative came out and said, yeah, what we need to do is we need to reform the police and make sure that none of them have guns or tasers or nightsticks or ever use a chokehold again. And 80% of his constituency wrote him a letter that said, pound sand.
Right.
You know what that guy's going to do the next day? He's going to come out and go, so it turns out I've had a much longer form discussion about this. And, I have been informed by all of these experts, because that's the kind of thing that sells if you're a politician, that these things are not actually a good idea. And he's probably never going to acknowledge that you and the other 80% of his constituents said no, but you're going to get what you want anyway. Right.
Right.
And this is the kind of small amount of thing that needs to start happening. It needs to be a thing that we start doing, because if we don't, then, I mean, hope that they don't come for you if you want. But your last thought when they do is it's going to be, God, I wish I did something. And this is the line. I never want to be that person.
Right. And as far as like the general public goes, I'm personally not excessively worried about, the rage mobs or whatever, whatever, I keep my anonymity right now, mostly because I'm not personally financially in a spot where if I got fired, because,
right.
So I've got to worry about that part.
The barrier to entry for most Americans to do what I do is gigantic, right? Because if you got on YouTube, showed your face, and said, these people are a bunch of leftist communists, and you know what? We need to get the hell rid of them. The reality of that is the backlash to you is going to be gigantic. They're going to start writing letters to your employer. People are going to hassle you in the street, on and on and on. It is a giant barrier to entry. And this is the thing that everyone needs to be convinced of. There's not a panacea. You're not going to get up and suddenly change the world tomorrow. It's a slow fight, and small victories matter. Right? Watch what the left has done. And when I say the left, I mean everyone to the left of Mao, right? Again, the left's definition, not mine. Doesn't matter what my definition of the right and left is. Matters what theirs is, because they control basically everything at this point.
They're controlling the narrative.
Exactly. And so if we can start small enough, if we can make little victories, if we can so much as stop the madness, right? Stop the gigantic push. And we can do that without destroying the lives of everybody that is supporting this. We can do that without, cancel culture coming for them. Or if you get canceled, we have some capability to get your life back on track. Those sorts of things. Then we're at least in the fight. Because right now, what we're all doing is going, well, I don't want them to come for me, so I'll keep my head down. I won't do anything because at least today they're leaving me alone. Well, all well and good, unless you're that couple in St. Louis that just had a mob kick in the door to their, the front gate to their house, and then start threatening to kill them and burn down their house. And you said, well, but I mean, I've got a gun, so, I'll defend myself. And as of today, those guns were confiscated and they're being charged.
Okay, look, I'll be honest with you. I watched the video. The guy, he had bad muzzle control, and the woman had her finger right on the trigger, and it was just, they just looked freaking goofy. At the same time, other than those things, which are not necessarily illegal at this point, what did they do wrong? They didn't. They were on their property. They were defending their property, and their property was in a private gated community. So,
At that point, I mean, you can complain about the lady having her finger on the trigger, and I understand all the people running around. Lol, guy flagged his wife. Lol, except the picture they're all using, he's not flagging his wife. So, and for reference, anybody who doesn't know, flagging is pointing your weapon at something you don't intend to shoot. But as to the lady with her finger on the trigger, what's the weapon safety rule? Keep your finger straight off the trigger until you're ready to fire.
Right.
Maybe what the situation was is she said, "You better back the hell up because I'm about to kill you."
And that very well could be. I'm just going with the way she was holding it. I was just kind of like, okay, whatever. But at the same time, it's just like I'm not the one that was there in that moment. So you're right. Maybe that stuff was maybe that situation was slightly different than what is seen through the eye of the camera. I'm just saying, at the same time, they didn't really do anything wrong. There was no legitimate reason to do all that.
No, but again, we come to the honest versus dishonest take here, right? Go listen to these DAs. These people are radical, progressive, leftist, commie activists. That's who they are. They don't care what the law is. The only thing that makes any sense here, right? Because I know the internet is all over it. Well, I Googled all the laws and I got all these legal precedents and I went down and I talked to a lawyer and it cost me $200. And I know that these two are going to beat these charges. Sure.
And it's going to cost them run over it.
It's going to cost them tens of thousands of dollars. They're going to have to go through hell to get their guns back from the cops because look, if the cops ever confiscate your guns, you're going to go through hell to get them back.
Right.
Probably to the point where you're going to buy a new one because it's going to cost you less money to buy a new one to get your guns back from the cops. Cops don't like to give guns back to people. Now, you want to talk police reform? Let's reform that. But that's not going to happen, right? Because the people who are prosecuting this are not honest actors. They're not doing what it is that makes any sense. If you have some honest look at what the law is, what court precedent is, on and on and on. None of this makes any sense unless the point here is that if you lawfully defend your house, we will come after you.
Right.
So stop lawfully defending your house. And then this makes perfect sense.
And again, that's going to circle back to the police reform stuff and going back to the Rayshard Brooks situation where the DA, without waiting for the, I think it happened down in Georgia. So the Georgia Bureau to finish their investigation, without waiting for anything to be finalized, put the officer on charges.
It's a great political statement, though.
Yeah, it's excellent. And he said that, from now on, any officer that uses deadly force will be charged with murder. That's me slightly paraphrasing, but it's not that much of a paraphrasation of what he said.
No, you got the point there. That is what he said.
If you and then you got our current Democratic candidate who, come on, let's be honest, they're not going to make it to the election. But you got him up there saying, well, police need to learn to be shooting for the legs. And it's like, do you not understand? There's some core things that you don't understand about how wrong that statement is.
All right, James Bond, you tell me how this works.
Yeah, you shoot for the largest target. And obviously, I'm going to assume all of you guys know this. Because I'm a novice to having a gun. I'll be honest. I've gone shooting 3 times. I think I did pretty good all 3 times. But, it's one of those things where...
You hitting the target?
I am.
Then you're doing good.
and I've even been told my clusters are pretty good. But, at the same time, you're still aiming for the biggest part of the target. It does, and if you're trying to aim for a leg, well, that goes from, that shrinks your target size generally down by about 1/3.
So there's a lot of argument to be had here, mostly with people who have no idea what they're talking about. But the biggest problem, and I mean outright the biggest problem of all of this aim for the legs nonsense, is that if you shoot someone and it's on the inside of their leg, you're going to cut the femoral artery.
Right.
If you cut the femoral artery, they will bleed out in anywhere between 30 and 60 seconds. So I hope you have a pocket paramedic, because if you don't, whoever you just shot died.
Right. If they take a shot to the chest area, stomach, any of that stuff, they stand a better chance of living at that point than if you shoot them in the leg.
Most likely that. And, I mean, look, this is the thing. Again, if it was an honest discussion, we would be having that kind of talk, but we're never going to have that kind of talk, right? There is no way that talk happens in open fora. No one ever, and I mean ever, goes to Joe Biden and goes, hey, boss, if you shoot people in the leg, like if you fracture that femur, they have anemia for the rest of their life, because that produces the most blood cells in the body. To the point that if you fracture your femur in the military, they discharge you because they can't take the risk of you not having enough blood if you get an injury. You are disabling them for life. If you cut that femoral artery, they're dead. No one ever says that, because the facts don't matter, right? It's
right.
Just say something stupid that Hollywood has supported for years, right? Oh, just shoot them in the leg, right? And the idea here is more to virtue signal about how cops need to stop doing whatever cops are doing. Right. And again, the problem is so many people, and I am going to say this probably 1,000 times. So many people look at this and go, let's have an honest discussion. And the last thing the people that you're talking to want to have is an honest discussion.
I'm gonna amend that just a little bit. It's not the last thing that the people you are talking to want to have. It's the last thing that the people that won't talk to you, the ones that you actually want to try to have that discussion with, not because of any other reason than either A, you're trying to figure out where exactly they're coming from, or B, you're trying to change their mind because what they want is so ridiculous. Like me and you having this discussion, I've learned things, but at the same time, as far as I can tell, we're both coming at it from the same basic side. It's so just
the thing. If there was some, like Chad has already hit on this, right? So we should do something about qualified immunity, and we probably should. Qualified immunity is one of those things where, if I'm going to be really generous, it sounds like somebody tried to do the right thing and screwed it up. However, knowing what court was in charge of qualified immunity, or at least what court was in charge of qualified immunity, I don't think so. I don't think it was some honest mistake, because qualified immunity is basically the idea that if cops do something, they did it in service to the job, and you can't prosecute a cop who is doing something in service to the job.
Right.
And so the barrier to entry to prosecute a cop now is that you have to prove in advance that they were doing something not in service to the job. Now, certainly you can't prove something before you've had the trial where you prove stuff. That's just stupid. And that is the fairly obvious outcome of the qualified immunity rulings, which is to say that they went, well, if you can prove before you get to court that this cop did something that the job says he shouldn't be doing, then we're happy to let you prosecute him. Except all that really happens from that is you can't prove anything. And so you basically can't prosecute a cop unless the police department comes down and goes, oh, yeah, that wasn't in service to the job, which in a shocking turn of events for a wide variety of reasons, which is the other thing about the thin blue line in the same piece of chat, you can't get rid of. You cannot make it so that guys who go out and get shot at, who get stabbed, who go into brawls are going to turn on each other every 5 minutes. No one will ever sign up for that job again if you do, right? And if you don't believe that, take a look at what happened in Atlanta, where they said, fine, anytime a cop uses force of any variety, we're going to prosecute the first excessive force, and half the force walked off in the first 5 minutes, right? Now, I know that, Atlanta PD said that didn't happen. I have 10 hours of their scanner on my YouTube channel. That is what happened, right? They are out there calling for help all night long from anybody who still has cops on the force. And in an area of Atlanta where, as far as I can tell, there should be like 20 cops on duty at minimum, They have no more than 8 all night long. That, I mean, pretty clearly, cops walked off the force. So,
right. Well, that to some extent that sounds like as though they're, if they looked at the military and said, anytime you shoot somebody or somebody gets hurt because of an action you took that was not in direct service of the military, we're going to prosecute you.
well, you need to understand that is how the military works right now. And the outputs of it are not things that people see every day.
Right.
And even worse, you hear people talking about how it's a good thing that that's how the military works. And it's not. Right. Under no circumstance. I know that, think of the children and all of the collateral damage that gets caused. It is a good thing, Don, you lunatic. Okay, I get your completely vacuous point. However, here's the deal. The way that it worked, at least when I was there, my understanding is rules of engagement have changed. But this was the rules of engagement briefing. If a guy picks up an AK-47 and just lights up you and everybody that you're with, and then runs around the corner of a building and throws the AK-47 on the ground, you have to go over and arrest him. Even if you know for a fact that this is a trap and that what he is doing is leading you into an ambush, even if you're under gunfire, there's nothing you can do about that guy because he's not currently holding a weapon. In a less than shocking turn of events, the moment that became the rules of engagement, what do you think the enemy started doing?
That exact scenario or something very close to it.
You got it. And whether or not, oh God, Don, you think the American populace is the enemy of police? I think some portion of the enemy, the American populace is the enemy of the police. Primarily the ones who overtly say they are and then act like it. Right. I would just kill a cop just because I could. Sounds like the enemy of police to me.
Right. The people marching down the streets saying, pigs in a blanket frying like bacon. Those are the people that they don't care about actual justice. The fact that they're still bringing up Michael Brown as a beacon of, police brutality is a problem.
Yeah.
It's like, is there actual police brutality? Yes. Address those cases, but address them honestly. Don't bring in.
Again, you're running into honest discussion versus dishonest people, right? Because if what you said was police brutality should be a crime, what we shouldn't have is cops who pull you over for a speeding ticket, and the moment they do, they bash out your window with a nightclub and bust out all your teeth. Right. You would have 99+% agreement in the whole country. Right. Nobody objects to this. And the people who do are so ridiculous that it's simply not worth talking to them. Right. We're outside the bounds of anything that makes any sense. And yet, if that was the line you were drawing, that line was drawn 100 years ago, 200 years ago, 1,000 years ago. Right. These things have been on the books as you can't do that since the beginning of time. And so that's not what we're talking about, because if that's what we were talking about, we'd all just shrug and go, oh, well, that's part of the rules. Let's move on. And furthermore, if you said, well, we've got a cop and I don't really care what his reasoning was. He pulled somebody over for a speeding ticket, busted out their window, and then busted out all their teeth, put them in jail. You would get a giant majority of agreement. And I don't know what the numbers are, but you would still get a giant majority of agreement.
Yeah.
There's police union arguments to have. And by all means, disband the police union, do it immediately. In fact, while you're at it, disband every other union. And again, with unpopular Don takes. But let's not rabbit hole here. So fine, let's get rid of this we defend bad cops thing. Okay, sold. Or not so much we don't defend bad cops, but we don't go, yeah, we know that what you did is pulled somebody over, bashed out their window, and busted out their teeth because they were going 3 miles an hour over the speed limit, and you were having a bad night. Well, whatever it is that we know about you, the first thing we know is you shouldn't be a cop, right?
Right.
And so after that, we can finesse what happens to you, but jail's probably in the cards for you, right? And again, you get lots of agreement here, right?
Right.
But that's not the discussion. And the discussion that is actually being had is incredibly dishonest. Because, again, if we were having an honest discussion, I think I just sold most of the country on, well, yeah, I mean, look, if that's a problem, we should fix all that. And okay, maybe the dismantling police unions portion of this, the qualified immunity portion of this, these are real discussions we can have. But if you include these people who are out there going, all cops are bad, pigs in a blanket, fry them like bacon, all cops are bastards, then you have polluted the conversation to a point where it is no longer even havable, right? Because if you go, well, not all cops are bad, what's the first thing they tell you?
That you're sympathizing.
Racist, bigot, sexist, homophobe, whatever it is that is their favored technique of that particular moment. The first thing they do is come to you and say, you're so bad of a person that you shouldn't be included in this discussion, right? And so their whole point is to destroy you. Their point is to remove you from the discussion. Their point is to make it so whatever it is that is being talked about, the rational, reasonable thing is entirely off the table. And the people promoting it are such bad people that you shouldn't listen to them. In the world of this is the internet, so you got to spit out logical fallacies. This is called poisoning the well, and they're very good at it.
Right. I fully agree. It's one of those things where the people that want to have the discussion, want to have an actual honest discussion, almost can't because, like currently, as it was pointed out, I don't have a whole lot of subscribers. Personally, I don't do a whole lot on my channel, so it doesn't really bother me. But at the same time, these would be discussions that if I was a bigger channel, I would be getting all kinds of people in my chat telling me how I was racist or whatever. And it's like that.
Oh, guaranteed. If you were a 100,000 subscribers channel and we had this discussion, there would be two things that I can guarantee would be in your comments. One, you're racist for talking to me, who is a racist. Right? And it doesn't matter that race has not come up at all here. And the discussion has been about policy. Doesn't matter. The long form end of any argument they have is you're a racist, right? And it would break down something like, oh, but cops just target black people, and on and on and on, right? And it would not stop.
Right.
And two, at least as importantly, we need to cancel this person because they talk to racists.
And like you said, race actually overall has not actually come up. I personally, I've always tried to live by the whole deal of I don't care what your race is, as long as you're behaving. Yeah, as long as you're behaving like a decent human being, I don't care what your race is. And even if you're not behaving like a decent human being, I still don't give two fucks what your race is. You're not a decent human being.
So the question there is one of individuality vice groups, right? And so this is the whole subject of it is almost exclusively a question of politics, which nobody wants to hear, but that is true. Right, because if there's lots of things that work like this, but basically, if what you say is, well, I want to treat people like individuals, then all of this idea of whether or not anybody is racist or any of that basically ceases to matter, right? And maybe some people are racist, and you, I don't know, don't like them, or they're terrible people, or whatever. But the question still is, well, what do they actually do, right? If I don't even know who I can call a racist these days. Louis Farrakhan's pretty racist, right? And look, I think he's a piece of garbage human being, but has he done anything? No. Well, then, I mean, he can go be a racist. Who cares?
Right. Or what's his name that they always bring up, back David Duke.
Yeah.
And on the other side of the racism scale, they're both basically on the same side, but they just come at it from different racist views.
Yeah.
But it's like, okay, but what are they out there actively doing? Who are they actively trying to round up and kill because of their racist point of view? The point of view is wrong. And
here's the line that is being crossed here, whether anybody wants to know it or not. It's the line of pre-crime, right? Because if what you're saying is that anytime a black person gets arrested, the cops were wrong, that's pre-crime. That's what it is. We in advance decide that you are a bad person because of some circumstance, right? And this is what Believe All Women looks like. This is what, I mean, basically every movement that you've probably ever heard of along these lines. That's what it is. Because the thing that matters here is not, to you, presumably, and to most people, is not whether or not the person was black, but whether or not they committed a crime.
Right.
And so instead of having that discussion, what you end up with is the pre-crime discussion, right? Well, even if that cop did arrest this black person because they committed a murder, they really only arrested them because they're black. Right. That's pre-crime, right?
Well, but it's also thought policing at that point.
Mm-hmm.
You know, and it's like one of the discussions that I'd kind of had to some extent on Twitter with somebody was the fact that they were like, well, police are supposed to be there to protect and serve. I'm like, that's not the oath they take. You know, it's the mantra that has been linked to them, but that's not actually the oath they take. On top of that, the only way that anybody can protect you is if they are with you 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every time you go into a bathroom to take a shit. If you have somebody right there protect you, just in case those random bathroom ninjas decide to jump in and make you tweet out something on Twitter, then, you know, you can talk to me about how, well, their job is to protect.
Well, you're crossing over other lines that are a problem, right? Which is to say that the heart of the argument you just made is that you are responsible for your own safety. You are the person most responsible to make sure that you're taken care of. And that is an idea that is anathema to these people. Right. It's why you heard for years, if you have a problem, just call the cops, to which, you know, basically everybody that thought personal responsibility was a good idea was like, well, 1911 is faster than 911, gun in the hands better than a cop in the bush, on and on and on. Police response time is 2 minutes and 14 seconds, basically everywhere in America to violent crimes. So 2 minutes is a long time to be shot, you know, on and on and on. And those are absolutely honest, true, relevant, factual points that very obviously dishonest people do not care about.
Right. And you know, because of police response times, even though I am now taking that next step, I've always had some sort of a equalizer near every door in my house.
Sure.
I carry a knife with me every day. You know, we have a fully stocked kitchen of very big, sharp knives, you know, sure. And it's why I have the type of dog that I have. I don't want a dog strictly for protection, but I still want a, you know, why would I get a little ankle biter that at best is going to let the neighborhood know something's upsetting? I want a dog that's going to help me in my personal protection if that's needed, but is also lovable and enjoyable for me to have. I don't care if my neighbors like my dog. He's my dog. But, you know, it's because of that stuff that, you know, I'm now at the point where I'm like, okay, these steps that I've taken are all great, but it's time for me to take that next step of personal responsibility. Sure. Personally, I hope I never have to use it, but I'd rather have it and never use it other than practice than to not have it and been like, man, I should have had one.
Well, yeah. I mean, one of those maxims that's been around for all of eternity is it's better to have and not need than need and not have, right? And look, again, you're running down the line of honest conversation with dishonest people, right? Because anyone who thinks that you should wear a seatbelt but shouldn't carry a gun is dishonest. That's it. Or rather, maybe more accurately, shouldn't own a gun. That person is dishonest, and that's all there is to it, right? Because all the arguments to wear a seatbelt are the same arguments to carry a gun. Look, I hope I never get a giant amount of seatbelt burn. I hope, you know, my airbag never needs to deploy. I hope that I'm not in some massive car accident. But guess what? Those things will probably save my life if I need them. Well, I just made the pro-gun argument, right?
Exactly. Substituting a couple words, but that's always the case.
And so the the thing, probably the fight of the rest of my life at this point is going to be to convince basically everybody who's out there going, what we need to do is have an honest conversation about this, that the people that you're trying to reach, the people that are having this conversation that you think is so ridiculous, they're not having an honest conversation. And they never will. Not once, not in all of time. One of my favorite examples of this is Ted Cruz debated Bernie Sanders. And I don't care which of those people you're in favor of, or if you hate both of them, or if you like both of them, or whatever. The reality of that situation was, regardless of what happened in that debate, both sides walked away and went, my guy won. And it didn't matter what was said. That was predetermined. And one half of them showed up and said, the other half didn't say anything. He's just a liar and a loser, right? And that right there is the dishonesty that you're dealing with. It doesn't matter how true what you say is. It doesn't matter if you make a great point. It doesn't matter if you're entirely on the ball to these people. Because one, they don't care what the ball is, regardless of whether or not you're on it. They don't care whether or not you're factually correct. They care whether or not their goal is accomplished. And I know I paint with a broad brush a lot of times when I'm having these discussions. And somebody in chat was saying a little while ago, no, Don, they're not all leftist, communist, progressives, but the leadership is. Well, yeah, that's probably a more accurate description of the situation. However, what's the practical difference between the leadership of the left going, okay, what we're doing is instituting Marxist-Leninism, and so what we want is communism, and the people out on the streets actively enforcing that will?
There is no difference. At this point in time, when your leadership, which is the people that you're promoting, how does anybody become a leader? They become a leader because they're the ones that are saying what the most people are agreeing with, or at least the most people that have the ability to put them in power agree with. And so then, that would mean that they might not all be, but the majority of them must be. Otherwise, their leaders would not be their leaders.
You got it. I mean, the best case scenario, and I don't mean to drive people out to hate everybody on the left or anything like that, but the best case scenario here is the tacit agreement, right? Which is to say that, well, I don't agree with going full communist, but for some reason we just keep going that way, and I like that. So they're not actively pushing it, but they're on board now. In the far left's view, these people are useful idiots, and I didn't call them that, right?
No.
Again, this is what the left called them, and so a lot of those people, they're the kind of people who spur useful idiot at you anytime that poor people in America are useful idiots of the Republican Party. Okay. I mean, these people don't like you, right? And it's not about whether or not you have one friend who is hyper progressive and you guys get along because I don't know, it was the beginning of the stream, you play D&D on Saturday mornings, so yeah, okay, it's you can get along with some of these people, you can have some sort of personal relationship, but understand that the far reaches of this are, regardless of whether or not your friend likes the idea of you being put up against the wall, and I don't say that phrase for no reason. That is literally what the Project Veritas tape said. Oh, we're going to push them up against the ocean. Oh, we're going to put them in gulags, right? I didn't say this. They did. Right?
I've seen them.
And so regardless of whether or not your friend would be the one to go, put them up against the wall, the reality is if there's 500 people standing there with guns, your friend might go, whoa, wait a minute. Reject's not that bad of a person. Just don't put her up against the wall. At which point 499 people are going to go, are you against the revolution? To which your friend is going to go, no.
Exactly. But luckily, the three other people that I do play D&D with, they're all actually more on this side of the argument. So I don't they would be up against the wall with me already.
Well, I guess it'll be nice to have company. I'll see you there.
Exactly. I think there's one guy that he might, depending on, whatever, he's the only one, but he's a dick anyway, so I won't care if he's not against the wall with me.
Well, so I know the feeling that, so a little bit of what you're expressing here comes down to, once again, hopelessness. And I understand the feeling of hopelessness, the black pilled feeling, right? Being as we're on the internet, may as well just say it, black pilled. But here's the deal. A lot of this comes down to people who have any sort of rational thought about anything, who think evidence matters, who thinks that facts matter. These people have been losing objectively for a century, right? And so a lot of them go, well, it doesn't really matter what we do. Well, that is true insofar as the things you're doing that aren't working don't matter. All right. I mean, that's again, this is one of those, it's almost a tautology things, right? We do stuff that doesn't work and we keep doing stuff that doesn't work and it keeps not working.
Well, yeah, then we're all crazy.
Well, maybe, right? But a lot of the problem is you're not acknowledging one of the realities of the situation, right? So, you can probably drive just fine every day of the week, but if there's, 2 inches of ice on the road, that is a pretty relevant factor in how you drive, right? And if you just fail to acknowledge that 2 inches of ice on the road, you're gonna be dealing with some serious problems driving like you always do. Right.
We see that every year in Iowa. It's like the summer comes and then the winter comes back around and suddenly 98% of the population fucking forgot how to drive in snow and ice. And I'm like, are you kidding me here?
Those are people who must, by nature of being able to drive, they must be acknowledging hundreds of little facets of reality, right? There's a steering wheel, there's a brake pedal, there's a gas pedal, there's a car, there's a road, hundreds of things every day of the week that they're driving. They just left out one. There's ice on the road. And this is what everyone that is in the right, as defined by the left, is doing with the left, right? Well, but they say they want this, so let's deal with that honestly. They say that the facts of the situation matter and they want this outcome, so let's deal with that honestly. What are you failing to acknowledge here? They're being dishonest. Exactly, right. And so what you end up with is the same thing as the driving in ice, right? You're not dealing with these people as they suggest that you're dealing with them. But dear everyone that is to the right of Mao, you want to have an honest discussion. And this is about the time that people start to fall off the really hard left, is at some point, most people do honestly want whatever it is they're talking about. And at some point they go, what you're doing even sounds counterproductive to me. What is going on? And it's basically at that moment that you see people fall off the left and move to the right.
Well, the other part of it, which still is part of the dishonesty deal, is that, you talk about them having the goal or whatever, but they always move that goalpost. You're never, even if you said, okay, so we're going to bring in psychologists, but we're going to have them, it's going to be a police officer and a psychologist, a police officer and a counselor team that gets sent in. One can't go in without the other type situation. But hypothetically,
sure,
they would be like, no, that's not good enough.
Exactly, right? Because and this is there's a video on my channel which apparently was way more necessary than I thought it was, and it's called The Lie of Compromise. And this is the deal, right? So what you're trying to offer them is a compromise that seems look, I don't know, maybe we do need someone who has all this psychological de-escalation talent, and that's really what they focus all their time on, and they're like, these people are just tactical super ninjas at getting crazy people to, I don't know, lay down on the ground even, right? Because by that point you could just, even if they're ridiculously violent 5 minutes before, now you can arrest them, you can take them somewhere they could get help. Okay, fine. But the reality of that situation is, if you send that shrink in there to go try and solve that problem, and the guy that is a violent lunatic is, for whatever reason, unreceptive, that shrink is dead, right? And so, well, but all, lives matter, right? No one should die in a police interaction. These are the things that you're saying. And so what you're trying to do is compromise with them. And the way that this actually works is that if what you were saying there, and you would probably not be wrong to say so, is, okay, well, I'm going to honestly try to compromise with you. So we'll get this person, but we'll also have the force available in case this goes really wrong. So maybe under the circumstance, because there's now only one cop who does violent things, if violence is necessary, this cop is definitively going to be wearing a vest. I mean, at minimum, you can use that vest to jump out in front of that shrink and save his life whenever it is that they start getting shot at. At minimum, you would be able to do defensive things like that. But on top of that, just in case whomever it is a really big problem, then what we should be doing is making sure that this cop has some unrealistic amount of bullets, right? For guns, right? Because it's a cop and a shrink, so they're going into a situation with maybe 20 people. That cop probably needs a couple hundred rounds. And you're trying to have a give and take here, which would be real compromise, right? So, look, I'm trying to address your problem, but I'm also trying to make sure that what I care about here is being taken care of. And the answer from these people is, shut up, you racist. Just give me what I want. And that is not a compromise. That is a tantrum. And so this is the lie of compromise. This is how compromise works in our modern era. Right. So, and you can see it in thousands of policy discussions. So, and by pick any one, right. And go to anybody that pushes any of this leftist stuff and take whatever they want and say, okay, carte blanche, you can have whatever you want, but this is a thing I know you don't want, but I do. So we're going to compromise. You can have whatever you want, but I get whatever I want. And the very first thing that you will hear is that you're a crazy person. That's unrealistic. How dare you even say so? You're a terrible person, on and on and on, right? Because compromise is not the goal here. This is the lie of compromise.
Right. I just look at it, sorry for a stutter. I just look at it as like if somebody came into my house to rob me and I was like, well, okay, but you can take this TV, but leave me my laptop. It's like, right. I still just lost my damn TV. What, and then there's a good chance that they're just going to come back tomorrow night and they're going to be like, the situation is going to be like, well, now I need to take your laptop. And it's like, oh, okay, take my laptop, but at least leave me my phone. They're just going to keep coming back. Maybe not the next night. Maybe it'll be a week or a month down the line, but they're going to come back because they know that I'll already give them whatever it is they want, as long as they leave me just a little bit so I feel better about that situation.
Exactly. Right. And that is exactly the way that these discussions go in this country, is that, look, give me whatever I want. Okay, I'll just take half. And it is starting to push into things like crime. Well, when I say starting, it's been there for years, right? So San Francisco effectively decriminalized petty theft. If you steal less than $900, it's a ticket that, by the way, if you don't show up for court for, they basically don't do anything.
Right. But they also decriminalized intentionally spreading AIDS. It is now a bigger issue for you with the law if you use a plastic straw than if you intentionally spread AIDS.
Nah, they're both misdemeanors. So, I mean,
but still,
it's the same issue. Worst case scenario, right?
I'd rather somebody use a plastic straw than intentionally give somebody else AIDS. But I mean, hey, they have whole parties now dedicated to intentionally catching AIDS.
They do. There's the bug catching community is real. What I forget what the hell they're called, but it's something like bug parties, right? Where it's a bunch of people who get together and they know they all have a bunch of diseases and they have a lot of sex.
Right. Or share needles or whatever.
Right. This seems unrealistically stupid to me, but
well, I mean, luckily they're living in a time where it's not nearly an automatic death sentence just to have AIDS. At the same time, if you don't have to catch it, why catch it? If you can just avoid it, wouldn't that,
Well, again, you're dealing with a kind of honesty scenario that isn't readily available here, right? Because if you're one of these people that thinks that, yeah, it's a good idea to catch the disease, you're also one of these people that thinks that you should venerate people who have AIDS. I mean, they just go hand in hand. There's not a lot of way around it.
Right. But I don't know. I guess at this point, I'm gonna tell you, I thank you for your time. I kind of feel like I wasted your time a little bit, and I apologize for that, because it really does sound like for the most part we come from the same side, which that's not necessarily the issue, but it's, I don't know. I just feel like you said, they're not having an honest discussion. And if you try to have an honest discussion with them, then you're just a piece of shit for trying to have an honest discussion.
You got it.
Since I didn't know you until Hazmat
5 minutes ago.
Yeah. And I know that most of the current chat is your, people from your channel and everything, which apparently is quite a bit bigger than mine, I would assume. Would you be willing to go ahead and link your channel so that way, one, I can go ahead and get to it, and then anybody that is coming in later can get to it from my channel?
So there we go. In the side chat as well as in the chat.
All right. I did go ahead and make you a mod just so that way you could.
Convenient, because otherwise I wouldn't have been able to.
Hey, I do good things sometimes. I screw up sometimes. But it wasn't a waste of time if you join us. I was never actually against overall anything you said. Like, if you came out and you said that you guys are just a bunch of racists, I'm sorry, but that's an issue that I'm personally going to be against. But as far as the actual deal of the far left, which is, I've got an issue with that.
What Pedro's talking about, and unlucky for him, he's typing in chat. Lucky for me, I'm sitting here with an open mic. Is that most of what I spend my time doing is organizing to stop these people, organizing to stop these kind of dishonest lunatics, organizing to stop the far progressive communist left. And so what he is saying is, and a lot of the reason that I was going after the I feel black-pilled, just leave me alone kind of thing, is because so much of us on the right, again, the left's definition of right, not my own, so much of us take a look at what they're doing, feel like we can't do anything, feel like, you know what, to hell with it, at least I'll have my life until they come for me. And that has been letting them win for a century.
Right.
And I have no interest in letting them win. And so a lot of what I spend my time doing is, look, these are the things that you can do without putting yourself at great risk. These are the things that you can do to move the needle just a little bit. And if so many of us are doing small things to move the needle, it's a lot of force to contend with if you're on the other side. And right now what we have is a lot of people who don't want to, because they don't think that it will help in any way. And so I spend my time trying to organize the small things you can do into a large thing that will help move the needle.
Yeah. Well, I did go ahead and re-sign up to vote for the second time, mostly because I personally, I don't see a good... I don't see a normal outcome coming out of this election, no matter what happens. This election coming up, it's going to be either A, we end up busting out into a full civilian war. Civil war, yes, but civil war in the sense of a civilian war, civilians at war with civilians, or go completely opposite, and here comes communism marching into the U.S., and then we're all screwed. I don't,
So there's a video on the channel. It's like almost 2 hours long because it's a lot of content, called "A Look Back at Yuri Bezmenov," and it's I don't know, 4 or 5 days old at this. No, it's sometime this week. I forget when. I think it's the Tuesday show or something like that. And there is a lot of information in there. It's 2 hours long, so of course there's a lot of information in there. But it explains why you're coming to that conclusion and a lot of how we got there. There's a question in chat, though, that I think is pretty relevant and strikes to the heart of what I do all the time. Dawn, do you not think there is a place in life and in our minds and in reality for the right and the left? By the left's description of that question, no, I do not. Right? I don't think that everyone who identifies as part of the left is a terrible person. I don't think everyone who, your classical liberals, your centrists, your whomever it is that you're going after, is a terrible person or forwarding terrible ideas. I think a lot of those people are wrong, but that's my opinion, and I'm perfectly happy to put that aside. But for the hardcore progressive, destroy America, communist left, there is no space for them and the rest of the country. And it's not me who said that. It's them who said that. They have made it clear that they will come for everything. This is why Gamergate happened. This is why any number of things have happened. Take a look back at anything. They are coming for whatever it is that you enjoy, and they're not going to stop until they've got it. And that totalitarian, that absolutely ridiculous Marxist-Leninist kind of mentality needs to be stamped out as hard as possible. And I'm perfectly happy to argue with anybody forever, for all of time, once those people and their ideas are gone. No, I don't want to kill them or anything, but at minimum, once their ideas are gone, once we are no longer marching to this communist utopia that they think we need to have. After that, we can all argue about and have all the honest discussions we want about all of the things, and I'm happy to have them, right? Here I am on a Saturday, perfectly happy to talk about this, even though it's a pretty busy life for me. I don't mind. I'm always happy to do it. But for those ideas, for that forwarding of the left, no. And in their idea, you are either on that train and you are Marxist, Leninist, global communism, or you're the right. And I worry much more about their definition than my own. I don't really care what anybody else thinks the left and the right are, because that is the group of people who need to go away. I don't care if you identify on the left and go, oh, Don, I don't agree with any of that. Okay, good for you. They think you're the right. They think you're the problem.
Right. I mean, okay, you got the person asking, do you think you understand what left and right wing means? The reason I ask is because it seems like you are putting the left in into one category, and that includes all of the benefits of the left.
Again, I'm not very worried about my definitions or do you think you have this figured out? No, I think they have drawn lines, and I am perfectly happy to use the lines they have drawn to say the people that they consider the left, that they consider on the right side of history, that they consider utopia creators, are the ones that need to go.
Right. And I would agree with you. It's not, whenever you're approaching almost anything, it's not about whether or not you would, this is what you perceive as the definition of something. It's about what they are seeing as the definition of something. The company I work for, which, right or wrong, as far as this particular policy goes, whether or not you agree with it or not, doesn't matter. It's still the policy, and it's in regards to weapons. If a customer has a permit to carry a firearm or something, then they can bring it into the, business. And if we see it, we're, outside of it being a robbery or something. But if they just happen to have it, whatever, let them have it. Don't kick them off. But as an employee, I'm not allowed to have a weapon on the property, whether I have a permit or anything. Okay, fine. I had gotten told that one of my employees had, after they clocked out, brought in their weapon, had it concealed and everything, and had made the comment that they had it on them. And so then I had to go talk to him. And I'm like, look, the policy states employees. Whether you are on the clock or off the clock, you're an employee of the company. You can't do this. I said, now, if you're going to break the policy, break the policy. I'm not going to tell you not to. I'm going to tell you, keep your mouth shut about the fact that you broke the policy.
Don't ask, don't tell.
Right. I mean, when I said I carry a knife with me, I have the CRKT Provoke, the morphing karambit. And that's my daily carry knife right there. And I make sure that the company does not see me use it, but I will still use it to open boxes, because then at that point, it's my tool. It's not a weapon.
Whatever gets it so that they, they're acceptable with you carrying it, then yeah, do that. Look, there's not much. I wish I was the guy who was here to say, yeah, we could solve that problem tomorrow. I would love to be that guy. I just simply can't do it. Right. This is another thing that I get a lot, is the Don, we're going to create this society where, whatever it is that your pet project is, that not you in particular, the royal you, right?
Right.
Don, what we need to do is, and I don't care what the subject is, this needs to be the goal. And my answer to that is consistently, the problem of the right is that everybody's got their pet goals. Everybody wants to do a thing. And again, I'm happy to have those discussions the moment we are done with these progressive, utopianist, Marxist, Leninist, communist, ridiculous people. As soon as we're done with them, I'm happy to have that discussion. Until that moment, look, we're just dividing our capability to fight them. And I've got a lot of monarchists who follow me, who think that the correct answer to all of this is to appoint a king, and then that's it. We'll be done with the communists. Which
what?
I'm not kidding. That is true. And okay, look, we can have that discussion. Except that there's no way you're going to produce a king tomorrow, and even if you did, we would still have to get rid of the communists.
Well, I mean, correct me if I'm wrong. Communism, like the idea of communism, is not necessarily the part I have the worst issue with. The problem that I have an issue with communism and even socialism is that it inevitably leads to dictatorships.
You can draw the line wherever you want, and I don't really want to argue with you. I have an overt problem with communism. Unto itself, regardless of whether or not your problem with communism is a practical one or an ideological one, I'm happy to say that that's a good reason.
Right. So. No, that's fine. But I'm just saying, so overall, where would the most difference be between appointing a king and just having a dictator? There's, at that point, isn't it still basically the same thing? I mean, well, dictators are just kings that can be changed easier.
So there are differences. For example, once you're talking about a king, you're effectively talking about feudalism, whether or not you intend to be. And dictatorships are not always feudalism, though they have a lot of relevant crossover, right? And if you want to get really deep into that conversation, there is plenty of difference, but the general premise here comes something down to if you have a king, then you have an established lineage, and ideally what they will be doing is passing on values to their children. That will be the thing that keeps out whether or this ridiculous leftism that everybody doesn't like, and because people pass their values on to their children, and that keeps this kind of thing away. Dictators, yes, it is hypothetically possible that the next person down the line is the child of whoever the dictator was, but if you are not openly monarchist, then there's no guarantee of a line of succession, and so you end up with a leftist dictator.
Awesome. All right. Before we completely wrap up, I got a question for you. It's been one that's on my mind since we started talking and everything, and it's because of something else I see within my neighborhood. So I noticed that you have an upside down flag.
I
Doesn't
do.
that indicate an area of distress?
That is the point.
Okay.
So the upside down flag has been a military call for help for a long time. It's I mean, when I say a long time, I mean basically the entirety of American history.
Right.
So if there is a flag upside down, that means whatever you're looking at is in distress and it needs help. And so, under no circumstances do I think we're a country not in distress. This is my regular background.
No, that's fine, and I agree with you. Well, the reason why I ask is because I have somebody that not every day, but quite often when I drive past their house,
Mm-hmm.
If they happen to have the flag out in front of their house, they have it upside down. And there's part of me that always, like I argue with myself mentally, should I stop and find out what they're in distress for? Because
I mean, maybe. Worst case scenario, you're going to get basically the same speech that I just gave you. Hey, look, I think this whole country is in distress. I think we need to get together and do something. And look, it's the kind of thing where getting more people who think this place is, the country as a whole is in distress and we need to do something about it. Getting them on board to do one of those things that I say that I get criticized for a lot is do anything. Right. And I know, don't do anything, lol. Well, look, if we're at the point where it's no one is doing anything because they are so depressed, so looking at a lifetime of failure or 5 lifetimes of failure, they're so black-pilled that, it's just going to fall apart anyway, then breaking the barrier to do anything is moving in the right direction.
Right. And I agree with you. It's one of those things where I'm at the point where I end up finding myself having discussions while I'm at work that I have to be like, you're walking a line here.
There's only so much of this you could talk about at work. Let's do that after work.
Right. I'm like, I had made a comment to one of my coworkers that driving down the street, somebody, the next block up has a Black Lives Matter sign out in front of their yard. And I found it funny that it happened to be a house where, as far as I can tell, white people live. And they were like, so do you have a problem with them having that sign? I'm like, not particularly, but considering none of the black people within my neighborhood happen to have one of those signs, I find it kind of funny because I think that they, I question their motives. Do they have it because they actually support the movement, or do they have it hoping that their house won't get vandalized if our neighbors decide to start joining the movement?
Well, I mean, you can question their motives all you want. I mean, I do it a lot, right? So these people are dishonest. That's just me outright telling you they have bad motives, right? So, and some of the end result here is, does it matter? Because either they overtly support a movement that is, I mean, the head of the creators of Black Lives Matter just came out and said, we're trained Marxist. Right. And by came out, I mean, somebody recorded them in a back room somewhere. And then that video got published. And it was, well, we're trained Marxist organizers. So when I say BLM is communist, I didn't say it. They did. you know? And so either, and again, maybe this is my overtly hardline opinion on the subject, is either you are a useful idiot supporting a communist movement, or you're so afraid of the communist movement that you're going to virtue signal to them that you're not going to stand in their way.
Right. At which point in time, just go find a grave and lay down in it.
Basically. And that is exactly the kind of, and again, I understand the barrier to entry is high. I understand that people don't want to deal with what is happening to that St. Louis couple. I don't particularly want to deal with what is happening to that St. Louis couple, right? I don't want a giant riot in my front yard. I don't want to be standing on my front porch with guns that I wish I had, except for tragic boating accidents. I don't want to be in that situation, but somebody is going to have to get together and say, stand up and say, stop the madness. And I'm getting tired of waiting for other people to do it because it's not happening.
Did you happen to see the Patriot rally that was held yesterday?
No.
I don't remember what city they were in, but it was a Patriot rally, and they had, people getting up there and talking. They had counter, what you would pretty much call counter protesters on the other side of the street, and they still invited them to go ahead and get up there and talk. And sure. Even when, and it's like one of those things where you're just like, okay, see, this is the difference between the two different groups.
Yeah.
Yes, this group is going to get up there and talk, and they're probably going to take up most of the time. But hey, if you want to get up there and say something against them, they might yell at you. The people that without the microphone might yell at you. But the organizers and stuff are going to be like, guys, go ahead and let them talk. You don't got to agree with what they're saying, but let them talk. But the other side, if you try to get up there and say something against them, you ain't getting up there to that mic.
They'll kill you.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, possibly unironically.
But, it's fucked up and it's crazy.
I mean, again, you're crossing the line of dishonest people, right? Because the people who would violently attack you for getting up and saying something are the very first people to say, we want to have a conversation. And then when you go, let's have a conversation, they go, shut up.
Yeah, you gotta love it. They say they want to talk, but they don't really. They want you to listen.
Yeah, and so there's I think it's 3-5, the 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, that their motto is deeds, not words. And I might be wrong on the unit, but I wasn't there. So, but it's a particularly good method of dealing with whether or not people want to have honest conversations. Deeds, not words, right? So if you come to me and you say, I want to have a conversation, and I say, okay, let's have a conversation because I disagree with you, and simply me saying I disagree with you is enough for you to go, shut up, racist, you don't want to have a conversation.
One of the many things that I've learned, especially, as a person that works at a convenience store, when I was a cashier, when I was on that side of the company, I'd ID people. They'd come in wanting to buy cigarettes, cigarillos, beer, whatever. I ID them. The moment that, they said, you're a racist, I'm like, one of us brought race up in this conversation, and it wasn't me. So who's the racist?
So you're 17 and trying to make me feel guilty, so I'll just give you whatever you want. Well, no.
Exactly. I'm like, it's still the law. It's just like the funnest. Okay, so like I said, I don't actually work on the cashier side of stuff anymore. I'm not a store employee. Sure. I'm with the cleaning and repair part of the department. Anyways, one of the things that I'll do is, especially since I work overnights, I run into customers that the employees have a hard time getting to leave the property. And so they're at the point where they want to call the police. And I'm like, no. Give me a minute. I got this. And the funnest one, and I'm going to share this and I apologize, but the funnest one happened just this last Wednesday night. The assistant was done. They were going to call the police because they'd gone out there and told them, hey, you got to go. You can't sit against our building like this. And the guy had been like, well, when my heart tells my legs to move, I'll leave. And so they came back in. They're like, well, he's probably going to tell the cops the same thing. I'm like, give me a minute. I got this. And the assistant was like, you think they're going to leave for you and not me? And I'm like, yes, I do. So I go out there. Takes me about maybe a minute and a half, which I understand the assistant doesn't necessarily have that minute and a half. But the guy, apparently his heart started telling his legs to move. And he told me the same line. And I'm like, well, your heart needs to start telling your legs to move now because you got to go. And he's like, you need to respect me. I'm like, I'm showing you respect, but you need to respect this property and leave. And, I won the day. It was a minor win, but I still won.
See, there are a lot of relevant things in that story. One, we don't, in this society in general, deal with people very well, right?
Right.
We like to go tell other people what to do and then act like because we told them what to do, they're going to do it. Right. Well, the flip side of that coin is nearly everybody who thinks like that thinks I would never listen to your stupid orders. Right. So this idea that you're going to get people to follow what you want by just telling them to do it, right, is worthless. If you go up to somebody and just go, get out of here, the first thing they're going to go is say either why or no, right? Or compliance, right?
Yeah.
And they will say those two things in hundreds of permutations, not the least of which is the example you gave, right? Because it's still no. No matter how you say it, it's still no. No matter how you say pound sand, it still comes from the root point, no. And so getting other people to do things for you is not about just telling them to do it. And that's not a thing that we as a society do very well. We just expect that we will be able to tell other people what to do, and then they will do it. And that's just not how it works. But at least as importantly in there is, this kind of thing, back to what it is that I always do, right? You see this with a lot of people who want to stop the madness, is they want to just tell you to go do one thing and do whatever it is that they want, and then the madness will stop. Well, the madness won't stop, right? That's not how that works. Right. And furthermore, when you tell everybody there's only one thing we need to do, and it's this one superhero thing, and it's going to solve all of the problems, one, none of those people believe you. Maybe 20% of the people that you're talking to, they believe you. But the other 80% walked away and went, what a moron, right?
Exactly.
So,
even if that would fix the issue, I'm not going to do it.
There's another thing, right? I don't, whatever you're doing, I disagree with. And this is a lot of why I behave the way I do. Because, again, I get all kinds of people, don't I have the panacea? Well, no, you don't. Right. If only because the reality here is, even if you're correct, nobody believes you. Right. And furthermore, I would rather see some majority of people do literally anything they can to stop the madness than I would the vast majority of people just go, well, the only thing people are doing to stop the madness is whatever this one thing is that I disagree with. That's not going to help. Right.
Exactly. Because there's always multiple paths to any destination. But at the same time, some of those paths are just stupid to take in the first place, and you'll die along the way.
Well, maybe. But even if you will, right, is a lifetime of doing whatever it is that you think is the right thing a wasted lifetime? And if you have an answer to that question that is existential, then I'm happy to hear it. But I cannot imagine that, we have, because I mean, that's basically the meaning of life question. Right. And I just don't think I have an answer to that.
As far as the meaning of life, my personal opinion is the meaning of life is to make the best impact on those around you that you can before you die. Because we're all going to die. If you think that, everybody that's afraid of the COVID and all that other shit, everybody that's afraid of cousin Rona coming to visit and everything, they're like, it's going to kill me. It's going to kill me. You know what? You're going to die at some point anyways. Live the best life you can live until that happens. Be the best person you can be until that happens.
I don't have an objection to that. By all means, do that. I don't think most people have an objection to that. Most of what you get into is, well, then what makes you a good person immediately, right? And that's where most of the objections with everybody come in, right? It's not about whether or not people think you should go be a good person. It's about what makes a good person. And that is I mean, we are way down the road of what makes you a good person. Right. And that being such a horrible discussion to have, because you see it all over the place. It's just this culture, and you're too stupid to know what makes a good person. They think rape is a good idea, and I don't.
Yeah.
Well, what do you want me to do?
And then, that circles back around to what makes a good cop. That is, is it whether or not they carry some sort of lethal force or non-lethal force weapon? Because you're always going to be moving that goalpost depending on who you're talking to about what it is. Well, they're friendly when I talked with them and everything, but then they arrest me, so they were a bad cop,
And there's a lot of that, right? And to the lethal force question, I mean, look around. There are people who are overtly saying if cops have lethal force, that's morally bad.
Yeah, well, and when they then talk about the demilitarization of the police, I had tweeted out the video of the LA shootout that had lasted for forever. It's like this is one of the things that led to the state of armament that our police go to now. If they got to be able to meet the force that they're going to potentially run into. Now, is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing?
It's a real thing one way or another.
Exactly. It's the reality, and I'm sorry. I'm going to be a two-way person because somebody tried saying that it's our First Amendment that protects us from the government. And I'm like, yeah, no. Well, The 2A lets us tell our government they're doing something wrong. The 1A lets us tell the government they're doing something wrong. The 2A protects us from that government.
Well, yeah, I mean, that is just how it is. But you're running across an idea that is pretty pervasive, which is to say that effectively nobody should die for any reason. Old age is the only reason. And so if you have a gun, you might kill somebody, and therefore killing somebody is bad, right? Killing somebody is bad. Therefore you shouldn't have a gun. Therefore cops shouldn't have a gun. Therefore, I don't know, if you hit somebody with your car, you're inherently wrong, regardless of what happened, because that's lethal force exercised against a person. And no, right? I mean, if you break in, if you kick down my front door, I don't really care what your motives are. I really don't. Stop kicking down my door. And yes, I'm perfectly happy to use lethal force to stop that. And for so many people, that idea is just inherently wrong. Right. So you believe in just killing people for stealing. The penalty for theft isn't death. No, but so what? Why are you kicking down my door? I'm not saying that every thief should be put to death. I'm saying that I will defend my life, my family, my property. That's it. And yes, I will do it with lethal force.
Right. Well, we have been going now for
2 hours and 2 minutes.
And a few minutes. So I'm going to go ahead and say, let's wrap it up. I feel like I've said that for the last 15 minutes. And
that last question was a doozy.
I thank you for your time. It's been an enjoyable time talking with you.
Absolutely.
And chat, I thank you guys for coming and hanging out with us. And for those that are used to a bigger channel and everything, I apologize that I'm just a small little channel. I don't really, though. I'm fine with being a small channel. And I thank you guys for your time as well.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, guys. Have a great day. StreamYard.